Hello and welcome back. Going to have a look at a mod today that I was made aware of in one of my comments. I've kind of not been paying too much attention to some of the mods, or a lot of the mods actually. I've been doing a lot of other different things and been a bit busy with bits and pieces, so just kind of put them by the side for now, but want to get back into some of the mods that are coming out which are really good. And this particular one I want to have a look at today is actually using it's a script that we already have, but it's been tweaked a little bit, I believe by the same person who made the Fabric script, and perhaps maybe some other people are involved. Like I say, it's a new script, so I haven't really looked into it too much, but I want to have a bit of a play around with it and see what we can do with that, and then get it into a map through Giants Editor, because this is actually a placeable mod, and it will be a Slurry Digestate placeable. It's available on the ModHub. I'll put a link in the description, but you can go into game and download it through the mods page in game if you prefer to do it that way. I tend to download mods onto my desktop. I have more control over them that way, and I can play around with them a little bit better than downloading them through the game, but whichever way works for you. So yeah, let's have a look at the script and the mod and whatever, and we're going to bring it into this particular map that I'm playing around with at the moment. So yeah, let's get on with it. So okay, so we've come out onto the desktop here, and I've got my map folder open, which I'm going to be bringing everything into, and I've also extracted the zip for the GUI storage placeable. What I'm going to do actually, first of all, before I go any further, I'm going to rename this. I'm going to call this Slurry Storage, like so. Call it whatever you want, it's just the folder that's going to be holding everything, but for later reference it might be easier if you call it something that refers to whatever it is, unless you've already got that, you know, Slurry Storage on your map. You might want to call it something different, but you know, or call it Digestate Storage, whatever. But it's, for me, it's easier to just name stuff that is short but to the point. It's not placeable anymore, so don't need FS17 etc placeable in there. It's not required, so call it something nice and easy to remember, or easy to identify in your folder structure and all the rest of it. Okay, so first of all, before I go any further, what I'm going to do is I'm going to identify parts that I don't want. Before I do that though, I'm going to bring my moddesk.xml out onto my desktop for the mod itself, so don't delete that by accident. So I'm going to highlight the digestate storage.xml and the slurry storage.xml. These are just part and parcel of the placeable mod that tells it how high to be placed off the ground, and tip collision areas, things like that, and price and the price of the mod itself. And we don't need any of that anyway, so because it's going to be part and parcel of the map, so you'll get it at the beginning of every game when you start a new game, so because it will be integrated into the map. So these parts are no longer required, so I'm going to go ahead and delete those. And then also the store.dds, I don't need that, because again that's part of the placeable mod which would show up on your in-game store. But I don't want to bring all this over into my map with the scripts and everything integrated into this folder, because my path file names will be a little bit long to then point to this folder to run all of this stuff. And when we start editing some of the scripts and XMLs here or whatever else to point to each other, and you'll see what I mean in a minute, just makes everything a little bit longer than it needs to be and more complicated. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to come into my map folder here, and I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call this scripts. So if we open that up like so, and then what I need to do is actually move all of these parts here. So we've got the mCompany factory, so that's a Lua script, that's an XML, mCompany factory underscore addon.lua, and so on and so on. Just highlight what I've got here on the screen, and then all I'm going to do is I'm going to go Control X to cut those, Control V, paste them into my scripts folder. Done. So now all I've got in that particular folder is just the i3ds, the i3D shapes, and the required textures, and a couple of shaders. Now obviously if I was actually integrating this fully into a map, then things like shaders and stuff like that, I would then copy these shaders over into my shaders folder here, and then change path file names and whatever else. But that gets a little bit long-winded. It's more to do with map optimization and stuff like that. But for the video at least, what I'm going to do now will work. If you want to get into map optimization and start moving shaders and stuff like that around, you'll need to understand obviously where to point your path file names to those shaders and things like that, but in the i3D. So you need to actually edit your map01.i3D to point in the right places and things like that. But I'm not going to show that in this particular video, because like I say, it gets far too long-winded and whatever else. So for now, all I'm going to do is just literally copy this entire folder, or actually what I'll do is I'll cut it, and I'm just going to bring it over, and I'm going to put it into my models folder where I've got all of my other stuff for this particular map. And then what I need to do is obviously bring those into the area that I want to put them on the map. So I'm going to import them in and put them down here on the map. So I'm going to go File, and I'm going to go Import. I'm going to go back to my desktop, just make sure I'm in the right folder here. I'm going to go Maps, Models, and we called this Slurry Storage. So come down to here. I'm going to do the Digestate storage first. So we'll bring that in. What I also want to do here is I want to create a new transform group. Don't have to do this, but I'm going to do it. Now I think I've already got a storage transform group, so I don't want to create another one. So I'm just going to call this, again, I'm going to call this Slurry Storage. There we go. That's fine. And then I'm going to highlight the new mod that I just imported. I'm going to go Control X to cut it, click on the new transform group, Control V to paste it in. I'm going to move it up, so I'm going to right click and go move up, because I like my water plane to be at the bottom of the cinegraph. Just personal preference, don't have to be there. And then what we'll do is I'm going to actually go File, Import, and I'm going to bring in the Ghoulie storage, or Slurry storage as well. I'm going to go Control X to cut it, and then I'm going to go Control V to paste it in. What you'll notice here straight away is that both of the transform groups are named Slurry storage. This is a problem when it comes to anything that runs on a Fabric script setup. Now this is a different script. It's got a lot more bits and pieces to it, but the actual base scripting is still the Fabric script, even though it's not called the Fabric script. There's a few tweaks here and there, but the actual base script itself is around the Fabric script, how it works and everything else. So the actual save IDs that will be created by the actual script work in the same fashion as the Fabric script. And I did a video a little while ago on how to overcome the duplication error if you import more than one mod, the same mod with the same name. It will create a duplication error. So if you want to know how to do that, go back to that video. It's a bit more in depth than what I'm going to say here, but all you need to know really is that they cannot be the same name in the transform group, because it will bring up a duplication or duplicate save ID error. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to bring them over here first of all. So I'm going to highlight the top one there, going to go Control B, and I'm going to click on the map. You can also go Edit and Interactive Placement with the shortcut of Control B, which is what I just used. And I'm going to highlight the next one down, Control B, and I'm going to click on the map, bring the other one over. Okay, so now that we've actually imported them into the map, you could do this individually. So just bring whichever one in first, say this one for example, and then rename it if you require to, and then go from there. But I've brought them both in because I wanted to show you straight away that they are named the same. You can see that clearly on the screen before I start changing stuff. But you could rename them as you bring them in, because you'll know that which one is which, because it's got they're actually called, they are named differently in the i3D. They're just named the same under their transform groups. But it's really straightforward to identify which one is which. Just bring up your user attributes window. If we just make this a little bit bigger. If I actually click on this one here and I open this up, we go to outputs, you can see in the output that this is digestate. So all I need to do there really is just change this. So I can just take that from there, go into my slurry storage transform group, go over to my attributes, highlight the slurry, Control V, tab. Now that's called digestate storage, and the actual slurry storage is slurry storage. And you can again check your output, and it will then show you that that is liquid manure, aka slurry. So you know, that's one way of doing it. If you bring them both in, you can identify which one is which by just looking at the user attributes. Not too difficult. But if you, as you bring them in, so if you say bring the digestate storage in first, it probably would be best to rename it right there and then before you bring the slurry storage in. But you know, I just wanted to show you them both there in the scenario graph, that they are named the same, and you can't have them named the same because you will then get, like I said, duplication or duplicate save ID error, because the actual save ID is created by the name of the transform group, by the script. Okay, so now that we've actually got them placed onto the map, obviously you know, if you're doing this on your map and whatever else, you're going to want to make sure that they're at the right height and all the rest of it. So you're going to want to just tweak them a little bit. The Control B or interactive placement tool in GE does work really, really well. Generally speaking, it gets it at the terrain height. But if you're working with terrain that's, you know, not necessarily, well, you want it to be as flat as possible when you're bringing in, or as level as possible. You know, you wouldn't want to put this. This is a completely flat map. It's got some bumps and raises here and there, but otherwise it's, you know. But if you're bringing it in on a different type of map that's perhaps maybe not quite as level in certain areas, then you might need to tweak it a little bit. And the Control B or the interactive placement might see a ridge that's close by, and because of the collisions and whatever else, even though you're placing it on a flat area, because there's a higher point over here, for example, it might be just hitting one of the collisions on the triggers or whatever, and it might then place it slightly above the ground. So it's just worth going in and checking and making sure that it is exactly where you want it to be, and just tweak it a little bit. But otherwise it's not generally too bad, and it always depends on the mod itself. Sometimes I've tried to use the interactive placement tool to get it level to the ground, but just because the way the mod is set up, and the actual center point of the actual mod itself, like the transform group here for example, has been placed perfectly in the center at the bottom of this particular mod. But I've seen it before, when you click on a mod, the gizmo is over there somewhere, not even close to the actual mod itself. So then the interactive placement tool doesn't work so well, because obviously it's going to place it wherever the gizmo is. So you would need to tweak it a little bit more, but this has been set up really, really well to do its job well. So anyway, moving on. Right, so we've got both of the mods in the map, and that's pretty good. Other than changing the name here so we don't have them named the same, there's not really much more that needs to be done there. They are set up already with all their triggers, and you can have a look through all of these and go through your inputs and outputs and whatever else, and so on and so on. But there's nothing really that needs to be played around with in there. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. We can now close down the Giants editor. We don't need that open for now. So if we go back into our map here, I'm going to go to the mod desk, and I need to bring in a few parts here to make all this work. Now, I was planning on bringing in a couple of different mods, so I've already set the bits and pieces up in here for the fabric script, but I've actually not got round to it yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually deactivate this so it doesn't cause us any errors. And then we can have a play around with some of the other scripts. So what we're going to do then is, if we bring up the mod desk that we took from the actual mod itself, I'm going to put this over to the other view here. So we've got some parts in the L10N section that we need to bring over, but because I've already set this map up with some parts to do with the fabric script, I just haven't actually brought the mod in yet, or the mods that I'm going to be bringing into this particular map. I've got some of these parts already in the mod desk already. Obviously if you haven't got them, then you just literally highlight all of these parts. Well, actually no, not all of them, because we don't need the function digestate storage and function slurry storage, that again is for the placeable mod. So you would just need these parts. You don't need those two bottom lines because that's just the description that shows up in the in-game store. So you don't need those, but everything else you would need. If you're putting this into a sample mod map that you're just creating or whatever else putting together, and you don't have any of the L10N tags yet, you would obviously need to copy that one and that one as well, the start tag and end tag, because otherwise it won't know what it's looking for and it'll cause a problem. But if you're getting to this point, chances are you've already added in L10N sections and got other things like I have on this particular map, but maybe not, who knows. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a couple lines here, and I've already got my Rostov, or however you pronounce that. I've got the product. I've got some inputs, but they're named slightly differently. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take that and down to there, because I've got lir, vol and error. There's my error, vol, lir. I've already got those, so I don't need those. So I'm going to copy those ones, and then I'm going to paste them in like so. And then I'm going to take that one from there to there, copy that, and paste that in. And it's always worth just going back through them just to make sure that they aren't duplicated. Chances are it won't cause any problem with the mod actually running, but what it will do is it again will cause duplication errors. And sometimes if you have things doubled up, like for example if I had here input1_dl, which is digestate, the input1_dl, if I already had that in here, but let's just say for example it was for fuel, it will then cause a conflict and get upset with itself because it won't know whether to display digestate or fuel. So you'll end up with errors there. So the mod, chances are the mod will still work, it will still run, it's just what you get displayed on screen won't be what you're expecting it to be. So you'll go to your compost master and it will say digestate, so one of the inputs would be digestate, not fuel, or vice versa. You'll go to your digestate storage and it will say fuel instead of digestate, or whatever. Or it might not say anything at all, it might just give you output1_dl, because it's got that confused. It will just give you the actual name, not the description, what you'd see on screen here, the text. So anyway, just have a look through and make sure you haven't got it duplicated is the best thing to do, I would say. So next thing we need to do is take our extra source files. Don't need the store items because clearly, as it states, they're store items for the purchasable, placeable items, so we don't need that. If you haven't got any scripts on your map already, then you're obviously going to need the extra source files tags included. I've already got those, so I don't need those. So I'm just going to copy the actual source files and the path file names to those particular scripts. So I'm going to copy all of that. What I will do is I'll put this in here like so. Okay, I've got everything. I believe I've got everything I need from this particular moddesk.xml, so I'm going to go ahead and close that down. And if we remember rightly, I actually created a new folder called scripts, which is where I'm going to put all of this, or where I have put all of this stuff. So I'm actually going to need to update my path file name for these scripts that I copied over, the actual path file names to the file names for the scripts which I copied over from the other mod desk. So I'm going to need to update those so that it points to my scripts folder. Otherwise, again, it won't know where it's looking and it won't run the scripts. So we need to do that. Okay, go ahead and save there. There's nothing further I need to adjust in the mod desk. I've put everything I need into there. I've made any appropriate adjustments. Hopefully I haven't got any duplications. I don't think I have, but it will clearly show me that on screen if I have, but I'm pretty sure I haven't. So we can go ahead and close this down. Perfect. Okay, so this is the bit now that becomes a little bit trickier, because each of these scripts talks to the next one, and so on and so on. So we need to actually identify some parts within the script itself, edit the scripts itself to then point to the next part and the next part and the next part. Because normally it was integrated into just one folder, there was no path file name exactly. It just was there next to each other in a base, like your root folder, which would be this one if you like. But I'm not in a root folder, I'm in a subfolder, so what I need to do is actually change these path file names to then point in the right place. So what you need to do is open up the scripts. Now this is the actual base script, so we shouldn't need to change too many things in here, or anything at all for that matter, as far as I know. We will check that out and have a look and see if we do need to change anything, but I don't think we do. Okay, so we've got mCompany factory XML. This is the XML that shows your bits and pieces on screen, so don't need that. If we go into the mCompany factory _ add-on Lua, again, there's nothing in there I need to change. And then this is the factory 2, so that's just for the different types of factories that we're putting onto the map. So don't need to change anything there. So if we go into mCompany graphics.lua, at the top here you can see we've got source mCompany graphics.mod directory and the path file name to that particular Lua, which is this one here. So this script is actually talking to this script and vice versa. So what we need to do is actually change that path file name. So in here I need to actually go scripts / so it's looking in the scripts folder. So it's looking in the scripts folder for that particular Lua script. So a script is looking for another script in that sense, but it needs to obviously know where it is for it to work. Okay, so if we go ahead and save that, we'll come down to our element, and we've got a few in here, so we need to do exactly the same thing again. So in anything that's got mod directory in front of it, generally it needs to be, that is the directory that mod or script in this case is actually located. So it means you need to then change that path file name to point towards it. So again, we can go scripts with the /. What I'll do is I'll just copy that text and then we'll just paste it in like so. And we can go ahead and save. Perfect. So all of those scripts now know where they are, and each one will point to the next one, and so on and so on. And it's worth just opening up the other ones just to make sure that everything is, there's nothing else you need to have a look at. It might be worth just having a look through the script, and if you're into, scripting and all that sort of stuff, which I'm not. I don't know how to script to save my life, but there are certain things I like to have a look through them and just have a look to see what part is looking at the next part and whatever else, even if I don't understand it. I still like to have a look through it and pretend I know what I'm talking about in that case. So anyway, let's go through this. So that's all good. We don't need to change anything in there. We don't need to change anything there. Okay, brilliant. So theoretically, we now should have all of our scripts and everything set up in the right place. Now I'm pretty sure we do need to change something in one of these to do with our XML, but I think that might be in the actual Giants editor. So what we'll do is we'll open up the Giants editor again here, and I'll show you what I mean when we get it open here. Now this particular script is actually, like I said, it's based around the Fabric script, but there are a few things that are a little bit different, a little bit more involved than what they were with the Fabric script. The Fabric script was really easy to integrate into a map. There's very little you needed to change other than things like work animations, particle systems, things like that, sound files and various other things, but that was only just creating path file names to point to certain folders, to locate a certain i3D and so on and so on. But this, because it's got the mCompany graphics set up, what you will see on screen, which we'll get to again later on when we get into game, and you'll see what I mean. There is an XML which is attached to these particular items, and the XMLs are, if we go back into the scripts folder here, these ones here, so we've got this one here and this one here, they actually show whereabouts on the screen and what information is shown up in that particular screen and whatever else. So because it's referring here to our output1 _ DL, and if we remember rightly in our mod desk, that's what we set up down here. So we've got our output1 _ GL or output1 _ DL or whatever it was. All of these are referring to those. So So output1_DL is referring basically to this one here, and then it shows whatever is on screen there in a box over here. But again, like I say, you'll understand what I mean a little bit more when we get into game, and I'll show you what it comes up as. If you've used the placeable, then you'll know what I'm talking about, what shows up in screen. This is what we're trying to represent now, but by putting the actual mod into the map through Giants Editor, we're still going to get the same effects. It's just not going to be as a placeable. Okay, so what we need to do is obviously go into our mods, into these particular mods. So if we click on the transform group, again I'm going to need to bring up my user attributes window. And if we click on the main transform group for the mod itself, if we come down to here, we've got mCompany graphics XML, and these are those particular XMLs I was just showing you. So we've got the mCompany factory.xml, which is this one here, and then if we go to the other one, this will be mCompany factory2.xml, which is obviously this one. So we need to point those in the right place so they know where they are. So we just go in here again, whoops, scripts / / and then tab across to lock that in. Again, what I'll do is I'll copy that text. We can go up to this one, paste it in, tab across to lock it in. Now that is pointing in the right direction for those particular scripts, so that what we get displayed on screen is in the right place and everything else. If you don't change those path file names there to point in the right place, it will cause an error, cause a warning or an error come up in your console or in your log text for the game, and then the mod possibly won't work. I can't remember if it actually works or not, and just doesn't display the on-game text. I don't remember, but at the end of the day, you want it to work properly, otherwise what's the point? So just change that path file name so it looks in the right place, loads up the correct XML. It's very similar to your animals and stuff like that. You need to point all your path file names to the right place to get the animal husbandry XML to work properly and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, and again, like with your storage facilities and stuff like that, in game, on your map itself, you've got your map01.xml, and also your terrain and your environment, and so on and so on. All of these require path file names to point towards those, so that they know what they're actually doing, and where to put things on the map and whatever else. So yeah, we need to obviously set that up so it works in the way it's meant to work. We can go ahead and save again. Right, so if I've actually set up everything correctly, we can now close this down. Shouldn't need to be in there anymore. We've adjusted everything we need to adjust. The mod desk, we've brought over our scripts, put them into the right place. We've adjusted the path file names so each script can talk to the next script, and it can load up the XML files in the Giants Editor session. Now we've created our path file name to point to those and all the rest of it. So now we should be pretty good there. We've obviously imported the two mods, the Digestate storage and the Slurry storage, into the map, placed it where we think we want it and all the rest of it. So what we're going to do now then is get into game, and I'll put this back into the mods folder here. We'll get back into game, and then we'll test it out basically. So I'm just going to Control X that, put it back in my mod folder. I always keep my maps unzipped in my mod folder because it saves me having to zip it up, then unzip it again if I want to make any changes, and so on and so on. But yeah, so I'm going to close that down. I'm going to get into game, and then we'll see where we end up from there. So I'll see you in a little bit. So we've come into game and got a couple of tractors here and a couple of different tankers. I'll put down a slurry purchase point over here. I'll get my digestate from the Bga. Just wanted to show you part of the mgraphic script setup, however you want to say that. In the past with the fabric script, you basically just open your F1 menu, you walk up to the item, and it gives you all the information you need to know in the F1 menu. It's pretty straightforward. But now with the mgraphic script, or parts of that script, and all the bits that we brought over, the XMLs and whatever else. When we actually get close to the mod, if you haven't seen this already, you get this nice grey sort of pop-up in the bottom right hand corner there, which tells you exactly what you've got in there, percentage wise as well as litres, without actually having to do anything. You can still bring up your F1 menu if you want to, but as far as I can tell, it actually doesn't show anything in there. So yeah, they've moved it from there and put it into, yeah, basically into that. So that's really what you have to go on now. If you get into the player trigger, which is a box around this particular slurry pit, whatever, this is what we get. So we get this grey box, tells you how much is in there. You have your displays, input and output, same as what we did before. I forget which one is which, input and output, but you know, we'll find that in a minute. So that one obviously shows slurry. So if we come over to this one, again we have our screens, and this one then comes up digestate. Perfect. So still have our monitors and everything, they're all our screens, digital displays, whatever you want to call them. So yeah, that's pretty much what the M graphic part of the script is all about, giving us that grey box with our information in there, which is quite nice actually, because it, you know, you don't need to then keep bringing up your F1 menu. For me, I find a lot of the time the F1 menu gets in the way, you know, and I always end up having to close it down and then reopen it again when I want to see how much of something is in, so you know, in a particular item, if it doesn't have out, you know, the digital displays on it. Just that is quite a nice feature. I am actually running the farming tablet, so you can actually use this, and because the mCompany script is based around the Fabric script, if anybody is using this particular mod, it will still work with this, the Tech Farm farming tablet, which is really, really good, because I like this a lot. They've updated this, and it's fantastic. Now you have to actually buy your apps and whatever else. If you haven't played with this, I highly recommend it. Fantastic. So we can go into our details, and it will actually show us here what we've got and everything else to do with our digestate, and then our slurry and so on. So yeah, if you're curious, it does work with that particular mod, which I really like. So great. Okay, what I'm going to do then is I will jump into this tractor here, get this one started up, and I will then start filling this one up with slurry. You could see there that they both take, I think it was 550,000, was it? My memory is so bad these days. Anyway, we'll start filling that one up. Let's just double check what it did actually say, because I can't remember now. And then what we'll do is we'll go and get some 500,000, there we go. So we'll come back over to this tractor here, and we'll run this round to the BGA. Been working all morning on this field over here somewhere, field 45. This one here, doing a chaff harvest. As you can see, I just dumped that tray there because I needed this tractor to do this. But I've been filling up the BGA again. I've already put some through and created some silage, testing out this Bga Bunker as well, one that I downloaded. I think this is a prefab one. I can't remember if this come from the ModHub or not. Might have come from ModHoster, I forget. But it all lights up and everything. Quite a nice bunker actually, reversible bunker. I prefer the drive-through ones, but I couldn't find one that I really liked with this kind of setup, so I decided to go for that one anyway. So I was just doing some leveling there and getting that all set up. But we should have a fair amount in here, I believe. Oops. So let's just see how close we have to be. There we go, perfect. So while that one's filling up, we'll pop back over to the other one here. There we go, that's good. So let's now go around. I believe this one was the slurry and the other one was the digestate. So we'll just come into the triggers, and again I forget which is the in and which is the out here, but I'm sure it will tell us when we get into position. There we go, so that's the in. Doesn't actually give you a symbol in the bottom here because you actually have to press the R key, not the I key. If you had to press the I key as in a tipping, then this would come up with a tipping symbol, but you have to press the R key. So, but you get your standard slurry texture inside the actual storage facility here, and your numbers all go up and everything else. If we just actually turn that off, if we jump out, you can see here the screen is going up with what we've got in there, and it will then go up over here, and we've also got our grey box in the bottom right there showing us how much is going in percentage wise as well as litre wise out of our 500,000. So that's really, really nice. It's quite a nice feature there that we can just walk up to it even with the F1 menu closed and have our fill level displayed for us, you know, just by walking past the unit, which is quite nice. I like that. So yeah, really nice. Okay, and I don't think it did it when we were in the tractor. No, I don't think it did. So you have to be on foot for that to show up, which is again quite a nice feature in my opinion, because last thing I want to be doing is walking, you know, driving past these things on the way to somewhere and it constantly keep popping up stuff. It's fine if you want to jump out and obviously you're jumping out to look at it specifically, but if you're driving past, you know, I don't want these things to keep popping up all over my screen. Breaks the immersion a little bit if you're inside a tractor or whatever, but if you're into the immersion sort of stuff, roleplay, whatever. But yeah, so that's quite nice. You have to be on foot. Okay, that was part of the farming tablet telling us that the whichever one was empty, I think, or whatever it was, I forget now. Didn't see it, popped up and disappeared really quickly. So we'll jump over to the other tractor now, because that one will now be full up with Digestate, and we'll get this one going on. Now I am driving in third person, if you like, out of cab, just so you can actually take everything in. I find that for a lot of these kinds of videos that I do specifically, if I'm stuck in here all the time, you can't really see a lot. So if I was doing an actual let's play, then chances are I would be more in cab, but this is more about the actual modding side of stuff, the types of videos that I do, so I like to do them out of cab, so you can see everything, what's going on and everything else. So we'll just come on round here. I haven't even got my wheel set up at the moment. I'm running on keyboard and mouse at the moment, but that's fine. So we'll come round to here, and again come into a position, press R, can switch that off, and then we will sooner or later get our texture come up. What you may need to do in the actual map is go into the slurry texture and change the min and max of where the actual plane shows up, because it may be a little bit different to what it was set up as a placeable, because you're putting it at a specific height on the map yourself, whereas as a placeable it gets placed at a dead, you know, at a certain height every single time relevant to the ground that you're placing it at. So because you've adjusted the height slightly by putting it onto the map through GE, the actual plane might need to be adjusted slightly, but you know, that's whatever you think is appropriate for your map that you're going to be potentially importing into. I'm not really that bothered. It doesn't bother me that much for the amount that I've got in there anyway. If you're only putting a little map, you know, at the end of the day it holds 500,000 litres, so you know, if it's got 5,000 litres in it and I don't get a texture plane, you know, would be I'm not going to fuss about that too much, but you know, you may feel that it's appropriate, so you might need to adjust the plane a little bit. The only problem is, I would say, if you start to tweak that, especially when it gets into the lower figures, what you'll find is that it will show up quicker, but then when you get to the higher figures, the actual plane will then come up above the sides of the storage facility because of the way the plane moves within it. So you know, you might need to have a bit of a play around with it and just see what is what works for you. But at the end of the day, you know, it's it works. So you know, I'm okay with that. I think what the actual farming tablet is saying there is, because this again works very similar, if not the same as the Fabric script. The only differences really are the M graphics or mCompany graphics, which you can see in the bottom right hand side there. The actual the inputs and outputs side of things are still based around the Fabric script. The farmer's tablet is seeing the input is empty, and it's showing that up. It's popping it up as a pop-up on screen because yes, it is empty, but I've actually, you know, it's just showing that because it's saying it's empty, but it's actually not. It's well, it is, but it's just, I don't know, whatever. Yeah, it's just scripts upon scripts upon scripts. They all confuse each other, I think, sometimes. Anyway, I'm going to go back to what I was doing before. We've got them in the map. They are working. We've set up our scripts. We've set up all of our path file names and everything else for our different scripts within the actual scripts folder that I created. We've put all the bits and pieces together so that each script can talk to the next script, and so on and so on. Yeah, they work fantastic. So I'm going to go back to sowing my apples, which is what I was doing before I put these into the map. And I'm going to say thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.